Hi, it's Alea here, and I am in what sounds like an echo chamber. That is actually just my rehearsal space. I really like how my voice sounds in here, and it's the office nobody uses, so this is my rehearsal space. So I'm gonna just do what I promised I would do and give you an overview of what it is that my looping setup looks like. It's gonna be all over the place, bear with me, but here we go. So let me just introduce you to my equipment. This is my McMillen Softstep Midi controller, and while I like it for the look and the weight, it is so light. It is so light, you guys, and great to travel with. The buttons are just not responsive enough. I still have, but I don't use an FCB 1010 because it's just so heavy. It's really, really heavy, and it requires, the model I got required high voltage, so I needed to get a step-up transformer for when I was in the States or in Jamaica, so it's really inconvenient. However, at least those pedals were sturdy. With this one, for example, if I'm going to launch a looping sequence, and I've set up MIDI to respond to this button, the 1, then I press down, and it's not always guaranteed that it'll start recording. So see, I just have to press down multiple times to get it to stop recording. And that's really precious time when you're looping because you want everything to be precise and responsive. It's very frustrating if it's not. So yes, what I've done is I've set it so that this is my stomp button. In Ableton, there is a feature where you press this down, and then it's the same button that controls this big stomp button right here. So now it's on plus, which means that you can overdub. So you press again, and there it is. When it's orange, it's overdubbing. You press once more, and now it's just playing the sequence that you've set out. And you have the ability to double the length. So I've just doubled it there. I set that preset as well. And then you can also take it down. Yeah, see, I had to press twice, and that's no good because everything has to be precise. And then, you know, stop and clear. So this is my stomp button, which, you know, plays, overdubs, and records. This is my undo button. Oh, as I was saying, this is, I hate when this thing goes blurry. Okay, good. So this is my stomp button, which records, plays, and overdubs. This is my undo button. This is my clear button, but I've also set it to be the stop button, so it'll stop and clear everything all at once. And this divides the length. This doubles the length of the loop sequence. And then these buttons are all mute buttons for all of the loops that I have. I have 5 loopers set up in my regular set. And then I just change up the setup and change the MIDI commands depending on what kind of special song I'm doing for a video. But for performances, I found that I need 5 loopers, 3 of them put together for melodies and vocals, and 1 separate for the bass. That's the bass looper, and it has a limiter set on it because the bass can get pretty rumbly, and I love a good heavy bass, so I'm not always, you know, careful with the sound, so I have a limiter on there to monitor that for me. And then I have a separate looper for my drum, and I have a drum effect rack that basically will add little effects to the looped in sequence, separate from what I might drum on its own. So say, for example, I want a nice bassy effect on my drum loop, but I also want a solid clap. For example, why is this thing going blurry again? Okay, so let me just loop in an example. So, see again. All right. And then I turn on my space. So that was a really poor illustration of what I meant. So basically my looper is subject to effects that the live audio of the drum rack is not. So I set them up separately. So as you can see, you have here kit 707, and that's where all my drum beats are, my drum hits, and my loops. I have some loops here, so. Right. And those have specific volumes that I monitor as well. I set up the volume separately so that whenever I start to play live, everything has been controlled for sound. And the only thing that anybody else would ever need to worry about is just basically monitoring the whole and just turning up and down the volume based on what, or the bass levels or whatever, based on what I'm putting out. So I make sure to, because Ableton is so versatile, I make sure to produce as much of the live sound before even going in. So for example, this is my instrument rack, right? And you can just go into your Ableton sidebar, you'll see instruments, and you have instrument rack. Just drag this thing down, and it'll come down empty, and then you can just load up a bunch of different pads and synths and basses and whatever else you want into it. And then what you do is that you go into this icon right here, this one right here where my mouse is hovering, that's your chain list, right? So you click your chain list open and you'll see these things across. And normally it's all stretched out. If you have multiple instruments in one rack, it'll stretch all the way across. And you just right click and you click on distribute ranges equally, right? And that ensures that you can then program the Midi controller. So I go into Midi right here. And as you can see, I've set up this instrument rack to respond to K3 on my LPD8. And what it does is that I've set the track itself to show so that I can see what I'm doing. So I program that top bar up there to respond to K3. And then I also program the chain list to respond to K3. And so what you'll have is that if I'm, for example, looking at my looper at the time, which is also whenever I also have a chain list right there that does the same thing. And whenever I play with this button here, which controls the chain list and distributes where the sound is going into which looper it's going, so that I can mute certain loopers and still have something else going on in a different looper at the same time. And it shows that. But then now I want to look at my instruments, and there you go. See, because it responds to show the track, and then see, super simple, but very handy. In terms of my loopers now, they're stacked on top of each other. So I have 1, 2, 3 loopers here, as you can see, and it's the same thing as an instrument rack except with loopers. And the things that I've programmed to respond to Midi are the stomp button right here, the undo button, and I've paired the clear button with the stop button. And divide the length by 2 and double the length. As well as the mute buttons, which are programmed onto the Softstep with my foot. And then the volume controls, I've also programmed to respond to this is my bass controller, but it has all these nifty little knobs. So I program them to monitor the volume on these loopers, so that if sometimes I find that one looper is overpowering everything, I just turn it down. And that way I don't have to mess with the feedback button, because some people program the feedback output of their looper, as you can see here, this button right here, so that it's like, whenever you loop in something new, it doesn't necessarily overpower everything else. But I just like to control that with my own voice and have everything be 100% feedback and then turn up or down depending on how much the specific loop is overpowering the mix. So that's the basic setup. There's more to it, I'm sure, but I'd love it if you guys just ask me what questions you have and I'll just answer it that way so that this doesn't go too long. The final piece of equipment that I would talk about is my M-Audio Fast Track, which is super simple and small. I think I got it for somewhere between 80 and 150 euros. I can't really remember specifically. But I got a basic Pro Tools version as well with it, but I didn't like Pro Tools. It felt very limited. And compared to Ableton, I still don't especially love Pro Tools, but I'm sure that's an ignorant thing to say because it's what everybody uses. You know, it's just my preference. So yeah, I have the M-Audio, and you can add an XLR cable for your mic to hook up. You can also have a line in for your guitar, or if you have a VoiceLive, like I do. I got this VoiceLive from a dude I couchsurfed in DC, but it doesn't have a shortcut button, so I don't really use it, but I am looking forward to getting a proper VoiceLive Touch. And once I do, you just connect it with a line in from a guitar line. That's all you need to connect it to this M-Audio. And you can either get an adapter for your headphones, so an adapter, and then just plug in an adapter for here, and then a regular headphones into the adapter, or else you can use these line outs, or aux outs, I mean, and then you put it into your mini amp like I have, or whatever sound system you have. It's pretty easy. So it's a USB fast track, connects to the hub. And what I have done with this USB hub, I think I got it for $8.99 at Best Buy. And it chips in and out, but it's cheap and it's super easy to replace. So if I'm on the road and I break it, I know I can get another one super cheap at any little Best Buy or Radio Shack or whatever, and I'll be fine.